I know it was wrong. But why didn't my heart listen? He's my daughter's husband. It was just one look, one quiet moment, and everything began to unravel. I thought I'd forgotten how to be desired, until he walked into my kitchen and looked at me like I was still a woman. The summer heat in Savannah enveloped everything, a dense, humid shroud that made the air feel as though it were bearing down upon your skin. I stood on my porch, fanning myself with a magazine, my chestnut hair swept into a loose bun. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, casting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink, yet the heat lingered stubbornly. My white blouse clung slightly in the humid air, outlining my figure modestly. I sensed the beads of sweat sliding down my spine, the wet fabric adhering to my chest, faintly revealing the outline of my undergarments in the dimming light. I was acutely aware of the transformations my body had undergone through the years. My waist had softened, my hips had taken on a fuller shape, but within me, there remained a vibrant spirit that time had not diminished. I don't know why I noticed him more than usual that evening. Maybe it was the weight of summer pressing down on everything, or maybe something deeper had begun to stir, something I hadn't dared to name. My eyes drifted toward the backyard, where my daughter Emily was busy arranging the table for dinner. Her husband, Ethan, stood nearby, his broad shoulders filling a faded t-shirt as he deftly adjusted the patio umbrella. My heart experienced a subtle, treacherous flutter. Ethan, in his early 30s, possessed dark hair and a quiet intensity that lingered in his gaze. I shook my head, trying to silence whatever that feeling was. He was my son-in-law. He had been married to Emily for 3 years. But the heat, with its ability to render everything raw and exposed, awakened a sensation within me that had long been dormant. Inside, the house offered no relief. The ceiling fan spun lazily above the dining room, circulating the heavy air. I took my seat across from Ethan, crossing my legs gently, the hem of my skirt shifting just slightly. Emily spoke with her usual brightness, chatting about a new show she had discovered, oblivious to the strange, invisible thread pulling taut beneath the table. My foot brushed something unexpectedly, Ethan's leg. I quickly shifted, slightly embarrassed. He didn't move away. His eyes flicked to mine just a moment, just a glance, but it carried something unspoken. A question. A warning. A flicker of something I didn't want to name. My heartbeat stumbled. A strange tension filled my chest, and I found myself unable to step away from the moment. I uncrossed my legs, adjusting my posture, pretending to follow Emily's story, though the air between Ethan and me had thickened, charged with something unspoken. If you're still here with me, if you've ever sat across from someone and felt the air shift without a word, you'll understand. Once dinner had concluded, Emily declared her intention to take a shower, thereby leaving Ethan and me in solitude. I busied myself with clearing the plates, but my hands trembled slightly as I stacked them near the sink. The house was too quiet. The ceiling fan above ticked softly, as if even it was holding its breath. When I returned to the dining room, Ethan was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on me, not in a casual or indifferent way, but with that quiet intensity of his that I'd started to recognize too well. His silence spoke louder than words. His eyes drifted down briefly, catching the shape of the fabric clinging to my back. My blouse still damp with sweat from earlier, and I became suddenly conscious of how I looked under that overhead light. "Is everything all right?" I asked, my voice softer than I'd intended. He didn't answer. He stepped forward, just a little, close enough for me to catch the subtle scent of his cologne, intermingled with the musk of summer and skin. I didn't move. A strange energy passed between us, almost electric. I should have turned. I should have walked away. But I didn't. His hand brushed against my arm, barely, and a shiver traced down my spine. His touch wasn't intentional. Or maybe it was. I couldn't tell anymore. "We shouldn't," I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. My lips parted slightly on instinct. Ethan leaned in, hesitating for only a fraction of a second, then kissed me. It wasn't bold. It wasn't hungry. It was unsure, exploratory, like a question searching for an answer it wasn't sure it wanted to hear. I was stunned. It felt as though he had known me for years, not just as his wife's mother, but as a woman. His touch lingered too long. My body responded instinctively, though my mind was already screaming at me to stop. I felt the heat from earlier, the way the damp fabric clung to me, heightening every sensation, making it impossible to ignore the storm brewing inside me. As he stepped back, I gasped for air. My mind was a mess. My heart was racing. I told myself it was just a kiss. A mistake. A moment of weakness. But something had shifted. Something had opened inside me that I wasn't sure I could close again. That night, in the solitude of my bedroom, I lay still in the dark. My fingers brushed against my lips, and I could still feel his presence there, like a phantom. I was overwhelmed by conflicting emotions I had tried for so long to silence. Desire and guilt coiled around each other like vines in my chest. He was my daughter's husband. That truth remained immovable. And yet, the thought of him ignited something in me I hadn't felt in years. I closed my eyes, hoping sleep would save me. But it didn't. The night stretched long and warm, and I realized I was no longer the same woman I had been that morning. The following day, I tried to lose myself in errands, laundry, groceries, wiping down kitchen counters, but nothing could anchor my thoughts. Every idle moment became a trap, a place where memories of Ethan's touch replayed like a whisper behind my ears. Emily mentioned she had a doctor's appointment and asked if Ethan could stay behind to help check the air conditioning, which had been acting up. My heart betrayed me. It fluttered. I selected my clothes carefully. Not seductively, I told myself, just something that made me feel aware. Alive. I reached for the same white blouse from the night before, this time paired with a dark underlayer beneath, accentuating the confidence I hoped to project. But even as I dressed, I knew the truth. Part of me wanted him to notice. When Ethan arrived, toolbox in hand, the air shifted again. He avoided my eyes. His movements were purposeful, too purposeful. I could see him trying to focus on the AC unit in my bedroom, trying to act like nothing had changed. But something had. The tension hung between us like humidity, dense, inescapable. "It's quite warm in here," I remarked with a light tone, trying too hard to sound casual. "Yeah," he said. His voice was clipped. Tight. But his eyes, they flicked toward me, and then away. I saw the same storm mirrored in him. He didn't want to be there. Or maybe he did. Maybe that was the problem. I sat nearby on the edge of the bed, pretending to flip through a book. I couldn't focus. My gaze drifted to his hands, his shoulders, the way sweat glistened along his neck. My stomach tightened. "You can take off your jacket if you're too warm," I said, half a joke. He paused. Just a second too long. Then he nodded, pulling off his outer shirt in a motion that felt deliberate. Not performative. Just inevitable. His undershirt clung to his chest, damp with sweat, and for a moment I saw him, not just as my son-in-law, but as a man. Flawed, confused, real. He turned back to his work. But the space between us had become loaded. Words unsaid. Glances avoided. I wasn't sure who moved first. Maybe both of us. Suddenly, he was near. I felt his breath on my neck. My body reacted before my mind could form a thought. My blouse shifted. Not tossed aside, not stripped away, just moved, displaced by motion and air and impulse. I stood still. So did he. His lips brushed against my collarbone, slow, tentative. His fingers stopped at my shoulder, unsure whether to stay or let go. They say the most dangerous moments are the quiet ones. The ones where no one says no, but no one says yes either. Just silence and momentum. We drew dangerously close, hearts pounding, crossing a line we both saw but didn't resist. My mind screamed that it was wrong, but my body was no longer listening. There was no seduction in it, no plan, just the heavy pulse of want, long buried, and now alive again. When it was over, we stood there, not speaking, not daring to look at each other for too long. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer right away. Then just a nod. And a second kiss. Slower this time, almost reverent, as if sealing something neither of us could undo. Later that day, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My skin was flushed, my eyes tired. But there was something else too. A spark I hadn't seen in years. It terrified me. What ensued was a perilous ballet. Emily placed her trust in us, allowing the quiet permission of solitude, quick errands, midday naps, time apart that we never earned but silently accepted. One afternoon in the kitchen, while Emily was in the shower, Ethan stood behind me, closer than necessary. I felt his breath on my shoulder, his nearness igniting a familiar charge. My hand slipped. The knife I had been holding clattered onto the counter. I didn't flinch. Neither did he. He reached toward me. Not fast, not forceful, just steady. I turned, met his gaze, and for a second I saw something I hadn't before. Hesitation. Regret? Or desire he couldn't bury. I didn't know. And then the hallway creaked. We both froze. Emily's silhouette appeared faintly beyond the frosted glass of the bathroom door. We stepped apart. Ethan grabbed a water bottle and drank as if it could wash away everything. My heart thundered, my blouse slightly ruffled, hair disheveled. But more than anything, I was angry with myself. And yet, I was alive. Each stolen moment afterward seemed to stretch the line between fear and thrill. I began dressing differently. Not provocatively, but with intention. My walk softened. My eyes lingered longer. I saw myself again, not just as a mother or an aging woman, but as someone who still had presence, still held gravity. I knew what I was doing, and I hated that I didn't stop. One evening, Emily mentioned she had to leave town for a weekend work retreat. My stomach dropped, and then fluttered. I reached for my phone before thinking, texting Ethan that the oven had broken. A lie, but not one I bothered to justify. That day, I prepared the house as if for company, cleaning, lighting a subtle candle in the hallway. I wore a flowing summer dress, soft against my skin, chosen not for seduction but for remembrance, to feel how I used to feel. When Ethan arrived, he didn't knock. He walked in slowly, his eyes sweeping the room, and then me. We didn't speak. On the sofa, his hands found my waist. His lips pressed into the curve of my neck. The dress fell softly, not torn, not discarded, just allowed to slip. His breath trembled. So did mine. I didn't think about Emily. I didn't think about what came after. In that moment, the world narrowed to now. Later, in the kitchen, we shared fruit in silence. We were wrapped in the heat of what we'd done, wearing nothing but the quiet. I glanced at him. He was looking at the floor. "We can't keep doing this," I said quietly. He nodded. Neither of us meant it. As the weeks unfolded, my longing transformed into an undeniable necessity, an integral part of my being I could no longer overlook. Ethan and I found ways to see each other in brief intervals, stolen seconds behind Emily's blind trust. A trip to the store. A nap on the couch. Moments threaded like beads through the veil of domestic life. But I began to question everything. Not just what we were doing, but who I was becoming. I watched Emily sometimes, laughing, trusting. And I hated myself. I began to wake up with a knot in my chest. What had started as a spark had grown claws, curling into guilt, dragging behind every touch, every glance. I started to reflect. I had attended a workshop years ago, on relationships, on intimacy, on what it meant to live ethically with desire. The facilitator's words came back to me now. Desire is a fundamental part of being human. But it's not desire that defines us, it's how we choose to respond to it. I remembered that phrase as I stared at my coffee one morning, still warm, still holding the impression of Ethan's arm in my bedsheets. The guilt didn't disappear, but neither did the thrill. I was both torn and whole, alive and ashamed. And I wondered, what had really brought me here? I began to read articles on emotional infidelity, on unfulfilled needs, on the difference between attention and affection. I saw patterns. I saw myself. For years, I had disappeared behind the title mother. I had stopped seeing my own reflection. My desires hadn't vanished. They had just been buried. And Ethan? He had simply been the one to look. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know if I would confess or quietly let it fade. But I did know I couldn't stay in this purgatory. So I began. Small things. I joined a book club. I took a yoga class. I started journaling not about Ethan but about me. I wanted to find the version of myself that didn't need someone else's gaze to feel seen. One morning, after Ethan left quietly, I sat alone at the table with my coffee. The sun streamed across the floor. A breeze shifted the curtain. I looked at my phone. Emily had texted, "Hey, do you have time to talk later?" I didn't know what it meant, but my chest tightened. I looked down at the empty seat across from me, still warm, and I smiled, sad, small, real. This couldn't last. I knew that. It shouldn't have started. But I also knew I wanted to feel alive. And I wasn't ready to stop searching for that version of myself. Maybe someday I'll tell Emily not about Ethan, but about the ache. About the way mothers can disappear behind smiles. About the loneliness that can live even in full houses. But not today. To you, yes, you still listening, I thank you. You've walked beside me through a story that was messy, flawed, and painfully human. But tell me honestly, have you ever stood at the edge of something forbidden and still felt your body lean forward? Tell me in the comments, was Clara wrong or just human? If this story stirred something in you, consider subscribing to Veil. We tell stories like this, not to judge, but to reflect. Tap like if you've ever faced temptation. Tap share if you know someone who's ever felt invisible. Until next time, be honest with yourself. Even if the truth is complicated.